Hey guys, how's it going? Zombie here with ZNR Gaming, and it's been just over a week since Funcom released the Dune Awakening Direct Episode 3. The Direct series is where we see interviews with the creators of the game as they unveil a little more information about the upcoming Dune Awakening game set to release for PC early next year. So we're going to do a breakdown and a small review of that Direct Episode 3, guys. So with that information out the way, let's get into the video. The filming of this episode took place a couple weeks ago during Gamescom 2024. The host of this episode is Zoe, I believe the name is pronounced. I do apologize if I'm saying that wrong. And we also have the creative director, Joel. Most of the episode just goes into a deeper detail of what we saw in the Gamescom gameplay reveal trailer. If you haven't watched my breakdown of that video yet, please see the description below as you'll be able to watch that video. It's a little bit longer than this one, and it'll go into a lot of detail for what they showed, breaking it down, mentioning the movies a little bit and the novels, and also with some theories of what we're going to see. During Gamescom 2024, Funcom released a new slogan for the game, much like Destiny's Legend. This one's going to be survive, expand, and control. So what we're going to do in the next part of this video, guys, we're just going to briefly talk about the information and what players need to know about those categories in the game. First, we're going to be talking about survive. You're going to, in the early game, the player will have to learn to stay out of the sunlight. You have to hide behind buildings and rocks. Also, a couple things they mentioned that were kind of cool was when you get to a building part of the game and you could actually build structures, walls, and other objects that will actually block lighting if they're placed in the right locations. And they also said that it is a possibility that if a rock that you mine, a boulder, is large enough, you can hide behind it to get shade as well. But be careful, because once you break that rock, if you are standing directly behind it for shade, the sunlight will come through that new open space and you will be affected by it. It'll probably be a good idea to travel at night. They don't really talk about the dangers of night travel versus day travel. I'm pretty sure with there being no heat and everything, and with there being more moisture out there at night, there's probably going to be some deadlier things as well. There'll be some Sardaukar patrols. There may be Harkonnen patrols as well that we don't know about. Maybe there are creatures that come out in the desert at night, but that's something that we'll have to wait for the game to be released or at a later date for them to tell us. You're also going to want to make sure early on in the game that you find caves and structures during sandstorms. Sandstorms in the books are described as being able to actually rip metal apart to shreds. So once those happen early game without a base being built, you're really going to have to find caves and stuff nearby or rock formations that you can hide in or behind. Another key survival tactic, guys, is going to be water. You're going to have to collect moisture from dew and water from plants. This is mentioned in the novel. They use dew collectors, and that actually is shown in the preview. You can also harvest this by hand. I'm sure the collectors will be much more efficient, as there'll be no loss of it falling through your character's hands will probably be the idea. Later on, when you get into battle, you can also craft blood extractors, and you can extract blood from your enemies, and then later on you can go back to your base and separate the blood from the water and have purified water as well. And that'll probably be a much better source of water due to how much water the body holds. And so at that point, you'll probably not really want to be harvesting moisture and do anymore, as it'll probably be a much slower and more inefficient process. Some of the dangers that we're definitely going to have to avoid at the start of the game are going to be the sandworms. It's also, again, there will be Sardaukar patrols. For those of you who don't know from the books and the movies, the Sardaukar are elite army forces from the Emperor. They're supposed to be really tough. It'll probably be an equivalent of fighting the wolves and Ghost Recon Breakpoint, or the military, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, from Ghost Recon Wildlands. Just a much tougher force than what you would normally encounter. There could also be harsh factions. There's a faction system in this where you can join the Harkonnens or the Atreides, and I do see them entering other factions as a DLC possibly later on in the game. And once this happens, it's possible they could be hostile towards you if you're not allocated to their faction specifically. Also, there are smugglers in the Dune universe, but normally we don't hear them being violent. But it is always another possibility that could be an unknown force. Our next category, guys, will be a slightly shorter one. It's going to be expand. So once you decide to build a base, you will have to start paying taxes. They go into that a little bit during the video, but I won't go into it here. That way some of you guys will actually go watch the full video. It's really interesting and they do a really great job with it, but you will have to pay regular tax or your base will break down, or it sounds like the Sardaukar will actually come and attack you as raids. Make sure to craft land and air vehicles as well. That way you can get around much faster. It opens up the area of the game for you so you can explore more areas, and it'll make it a lot quicker to get away as well. The air vehicles will be great because it'll also allow you to fly over the worm areas, and you'll also be able to fly over rock formations. Now, we're not sure of the height, but I believe it's around 5,000 feet. I could be wrong about that. In the books, they mentioned that the sandstorms are mostly dust and not very dangerous. So it's possible with the ornithopters, guys, maybe they'll require certain upgrades, maybe they won't. But we may actually be able to fly over storms when they occur. We'll have to wait to see how regularly we can do that, but it's always a very good possibility. While exploring, you also want to raid a lot of NPC bases. They also have some areas, I do apologize for it slipping my memory while making this video, but there are also areas that seem like small bases, like raid type of bases, to where you'll have to go in, preferably with teammates and friends, and clear these areas to have much better loot than the normal NPC bases that are just in just in cliff sides and caverns and stuff. And there'll be a lot heavier forces to deal with as well. You can also build multiple bases, I believe it was said at one point during the interview. These can be built in PvP and PvE areas. PvE areas, of course, can be done with friends. You can actually allocate areas beside your base. That's not mentioned in here. I got it from another source of information. But you can build bases beside yours for friends or allow them to build there. And the PvP areas are where your great loot is going to be at. That's going to be where you're going to go into the deep desert, where you're going to be trying to do spice. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But we do know that there are bases you can build. There should be multiple, and I'm sure the more bases you build, the higher your taxes will become. The third section, guys, we're going to talk about, or the next section, is going to be the control section. You're going to be able to join or you'll be able to join factions in this game. You're going to be able to join the Atreides, as shown in the movies, more of the good guys, even though it's kind of, they're all at war one way or the other. But the other side is going to be the Harkonnens, and joining those will make you more aggressive toward the other faction, and those people more allied towards you. You can also join and create guilds for you and your friends, and the bigger guilds are going to play a huge part while you're harvesting the spice. Because when you go into these PvP areas, guys, you're going to want to rush into those. You're going to want to build up your bases, and you're going to want to have a big crew to go out and get spice, because everyone will be competing for it. And when you go out there with a team, if you have a much larger team, if you have 6, 7, 8 guys versus 3, then more than likely those 3 are not going to mess with you. It is possible you'll run into some nicer people out there who will say, okay, get the corner of the field before the worms show up, but more than likely the bigger force is going to rule. So you're going to really want to build up that guild, and so you can harvest all that melange spice, because that's where the big bucks in the game are going to come from. You're also going to, like I said, have to fight off rival guilds. The PvP aspect of raiding bases, from what I understand, is not quite as worth it as you would normally find in games. I'm not sure because there's no stockpile of spice. Maybe you sell it right away normally, but it is a possibility to raid other bases. So you're going to want a big force, like I said, but you're also going to want to fight off from the spice fields, because collecting the spice is what's going to grant you the most amount of money, and which will get you the best gear, and also it'll attract more people to your guild as well. A couple other things I want to talk about, guys, that we saw in the preview, or sorry, not in the preview, but in the interview, was one thing was we saw new equipment for harvesting spice. We saw small harvesters. Now in the movies, these things are massive, and they're described as such in the novels. I'm stumbling over myself, I do apologize. But in the game, we saw them a little bit bigger than tanks, if that's what they were, that you could actually set them down. It'll probably make them a lot easier to drop off and collect, to do it faster when worm signs are seen. We don't know how far away worm signs will be seen in the game. The movie, they can see them almost half an hour out. But these smaller ones will allow us to get in quick, fill up, and leave the area, and we won't be having this huge selection to fill, even though those huge harvesters, I'm sure, will be available at one time or another, if not at launch. They also have a static compactor, as shown in the preview. It allows you to clunk different types of sand together. We saw them use it on flower sand, and I'm sure to work on the spice as well. It shoots and creates a static field on the surface, pulling all of that sand in that area that's not the normal sand of the desert into a clunk for you to collect a larger portion quicker. Now, unfortunately, I do believe the static of that, due to the electrical fields and how it drives the worms crazy in the novels and the movies, you're not going to be able to use that without calling worms to you faster. But if you're collecting 10 times the amount of spice or flower sand and the worm comes 5 times faster, it's definitely going to be worth it to use this instead of trying to collect it by hand. The static compactor can also be used, as we saw in the preview, for finding buried treasure of sorts. Now, of course, they're not going to be chests just lying around filled with spice or gold, but it's also possible it might be. We see that you can scan an area with the tool, and if you see an object located, you can shoot that area with the sand compactor, and it will pull whatever's below the surface to the surface, so you can find things randomly out in the desert. Now, I don't know how close these will be together, or if they'll be far apart, if you're going to want to run around spam clicking that scan, or if that even doing the scan is going to call the worms. These are all factors we'll have to figure out later. Another awesome thing they talked about, guys, was the faction specific styles. If you play games like ESO, you know that if you're a blacksmith or tailor or something like that, when you're crafting in that game, tools, armor, and everything, you can pick a specific style by race. In this game, in Dune Awakening, you'll be able to do the same thing by faction. If you align yourself with the Atreides, you're going to find a more decadent style of weapons, along with clothing. Structures themselves will be changed by it. You'll have a neutral one that you can use for all that information as well before you side with a faction. And if you go with the Harkonnens, it'll be more of a black suit style of stuff like they normally wear. I think the weapons will be different. The housing won't look quite as decadent as much as it will look really intimidating. Now, the interesting things about this, guys, is you can build bases with teammates, and you can build different areas of the base in different styles, or just mix them together completely part by part, if you have a friend that's with the Harkonnens and a friend that's with the Atreides. Now, something I wouldn't personally recommend until we find out, late in the game if it makes an effect, but they did mention something that was really cool. If you want to learn both of these styles, it is actually possible to join a faction and betray that faction at a later time. Now, that we don't know the full effects. We're told we may not want to do that, but if you're just looking to collect all the styles yourself, that will give you the ability to unlock both styles. Now, that will probably also cause them to be more aggressive. Normally, if you're around a faction and you haven't chosen one yet, they may be a little aggressive, and then maybe they'll call in reinforcements. Maybe they'll be heavier armed if they're around you. We don't know yet, but we do know that we're told it's probably not the best idea, and I know a lot of friends who are going to do it right off the bat. We also don't know if we'll be able to amend that, but I will say one thing, guys. I would love to see an Atreides style or Harkonnen style, probably Atreides, and then if you betray them, give you the ability to slightly alter it. Maybe you have a red tag on your clothes, maybe there's a cut in them or something, a sleeve removed, some form of showing that you were with them, but you tainted that trust and that you betrayed them. I think that would be something really awesome to show, and I would love to see that added to the game if it's not there already. Last but not least, guys, we're going to talk about the player market. Now, this was only very briefly mentioned in the preview, so we're going to be brief about it. But if you are also looking for those different styles of items and you don't want to betray anyone and you don't have that style, you can actually go to the player market in the game. We're not sure how it works yet, but you can create blueprints of weapons, armor, vehicles probably, I believe, but you can for structures as well, and whole buildings, and save those blueprints, and you can sell the blueprints on the player market. You may also be able to sell the items after they've been crafted, but something tells me it'll mostly be a blueprint type of thing, and maybe you can trade the materials, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to trade the items themselves. That'll kind of get rid of the idea for a blueprint for me, if I can just trade the items with someone. But that's it for the video, guys. It's run a little longer than my normal ones. For that, I apologize. I am really excited for Dune Awakening. I really can't wait to get my hands on it. I'm a fan of the Dune franchise. I've actually got the first 2 movies coming in the mail in a couple days. Got ordered them. I've listened to the first couple books, and I just really can't wait to see how accurate the game is, how much love, care, and attention they've put in versus the books and the movies. So please, if you would, like, subscribe, and comment below. Make sure you watch the breakdown I did of the reveal trailer, and also if you guys do subscribe and follow us with that notification bell, if we get enough subscribers, guys, and enough following before the game releases, I'd really like to reopen my Discord, and I'd like to add Dune Awakening to it, so we could potentially have a large guild based just on this channel. But thanks again. I hope to see you guys in the next video.